Hello guys, welcome back to another Android Studio tutorial. In this episode, we are going to create a simple fragment example. I already have a video on fragment example using Eclipse IDE. Many of my YouTube subscribers and viewers request me to recreate the same video using Android Studio. Create a new project in Android Studio. This application contains two fragments. We are going to add each of these fragments into the activity main.xml file one by one using a button click. So first create the fragments. So right click the app folder and select the new option and choose fragment. Select a blank fragment. Here you need to specify a class name for the fragment. Here I name it as fragment1. Here is the layout for the fragment. I name it as fragment1 layout. There is no need of this and finish. So here we create a fragment that is called fragment1. This is a frame layout. Now here I am going to add a text view. Add a new text view. Specify the layout for the text view. Android layout width. Name it as, specify it as match parent, and Android layout height. It is wrap content. Specify some text. Android text. Welcome to fragment1. Also specify the text as large. So Android text appearance into Android text appearance large. Now close this text view. Also here I change the height of this layout into 400 dp, and I need some background color for this layout. Specify some background color. Android background, and here we have some HTML color code. Put a hat symbol and specify the color code. Okay, this will gives a background color for the layout. Now align the text view at the center. Android layout gravity into center. Now align the text at the center. So Android gravity into center. So this is the first fragment. Now we have to add another fragment. Right click the application folder and select the fragment option and create a blank fragment. Name the second fragment as fragment2 and change the layout file name into fragment2 layout and click finish. Now here we have the second fragment. Go to the fragment1 layout. I copy all the layout codes. Go to the fragment2 layout, remove the codes and paste the same code again here and change the text into fragment2. Welcome to fragment2. Also we have to change the background color of the second fragment. Copy an HTML color code and put it here. Okay, now we have two fragments, fragment1 and fragment2. Now go to the activity main.xml file. Here is a text view is available. Remove that text view. It is a relative layout. Change that one into linear layout. Specify an orientation for the layout. Android orientation into vertical. Now add a button here. Specify the layout and row it layout width into specify the width as 250 dp. Now specify the height and row it layout height into wrap content. Specify some text for the button and row it text. Load first fragment. And specify an ID for the button and row it IT plus ID. Specify that one as BN. Now this will give you a button. Now align the button at the center and row it layout gravity into center horizontal. Okay, now we have a button available on the activity main.xml file. Now we have to place a container for the fragments. We have to display the fragment on the activity main.xml file. So here I am going to specify some container for the fragment. It is a relative layout. Specify the layout for the relative layout and row it layout width into match parent and row it layout height into 400 dp. I put it as 400 dp because our fragment height is 400 dp. So specify the relative layout height into 400 dp. Put some margin at the top and row it layout margin top into 20 dp. So this will give some space between the button and the relative layout. Now specify some ID for the relative layout and row it ID. I name it as plus ID. Name it as fragment container. Okay. Now we finish all the GUI part of the application. Now go to the main activity.java file. Here it is action bar activity that is already deprecated, so simply use activity. There is no need of an options menu, so remove all these unwanted codes. First create an variable for button. Name it as bn. Now initialize that variable bn equal to it is button, typecast that one into button and find it using find view by id or dot id dot. The identifier is bn. Now specify an on click method for the button and row it set on click listener. Okay, now define some variables here. Create a boolean status into and initialize that one as true, initialize that one at false. Okay, and first we have to, whenever user click the button, we have to load the first fragment. Also when user click the button again, we have to load the second fragment. So first specify an if loop here. If the value of the variable status is true, that means we have to load the first fragment. So first we have to create an object of fragment manager equal to get fragment manager. If you use the supporting library, instead of get fragment manager, you have to use the get support fragment manager. Okay. Now we have to specify an object of fragment transaction. Name it as fragment transaction equal to fragment manager dot begin transaction. Okay, I just put these two statements outside of this if loop, that is better. Okay, so whenever user click the button for the first time, we have to load the first fragment. So fragment transaction dot add Okay, so before going to add, we have to create an object of the first fragment. So fragment 1 f1 equal to new fragment 1. Now we have to add the first fragment into the relative layout available on the activity main.xml file. So fragment transaction dot add. First we have to specify the container for the fragment. It is available on Android. It is available on r dot layout dot. The identifier is fragment container. So it is not layout, it is id r dot id dot fragment container. Now specify the fragment class object. Here it is f1. And finally we have to commit the transaction. So fragment transaction dot commit. This will add the first fragment into the relative layout. And after adding the first fragment, we have to change the button text into load second fragment. So set to text load second fragment. Also change the variable status value into true. Otherwise we have to load the second fragment. So fragment transaction dot add. First create an object of the second fragment, fragment 2 f2 equal to new fragment 2. Now we have to add the second fragment into the relative layout. So fragment transaction dot add r dot id dot fragment container. Now specify the object f2 and commit the transaction. Fragment transaction dot commit. Okay. Also here the same thing again, we have to change the button text into load first fragment and change the variable status into false. Here it is load first fragment. Now we finish the coding. Now we can test the application. Okay, now the application is available on a virtual device. Now load the first fragment. This will load the first fragment. Welcome to fragment 1. Now I'm going to load the second fragment. Load second fragment. This will load the second fragment into the relative layout. So if you click the back button, it will exit the application. To avoid that one, you have to add a backstack for the fragments. So it is very simple. So before commit the transaction, you have to add a backstack. So before commit the transaction, add a backstack. Fragment transaction dot add it to backstack and specify null value. There is no need of passing a string. Now add the backstack for the second fragment. Before commit it, add the backstack for the second fragment also. Okay. Now run the application again. Okay, now start the first fragment. Now the first fragment is loaded. Now load the second fragment. Now the second fragment is loaded, and now I click the back button. It will go to the first fragment again. I hope you understand the concepts. Please subscribe my channel now for getting more video updates on Android. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.